Gigantomachia is a hero now, we've learned Toga's secret weakness, and All For One has a terrifying new form. We open My Hero Academia chapter 382 with an oddly quiet moment. In the midst of the battle, with everything going crazy, Hawks and All For One have the same realization. This situation is unclear. Even with All For One still free and Toga's Sad Man's Parade still going on, the situation isn't as bad or as good as it could be. There's one world-breaking thing that should have decided this fight, but it didn't happen. We see it firsthand as one of the Shigaraki clones reaches down to the ground. He places all 5 fingers of his hand on the wet pavement, trying to use decay, but nothing. He can just feel the ground beneath his fingers. His quirk doesn't work. The clone narrows his eyes, not sure what to make of this. If he has any memories of the original Shigaraki, he must be feeling strange right now. Odds are good no one noticed that. In the middle of this chaotic fight, it's hard for the heroes to pick out one Shigaraki clone, especially when he's not doing anything. The parade is in full swing. Toga is throwing out Twice clones everywhere. They're almost a solid mass of flesh, rampaging and growing. Still, Tsuyu is starting to come to the same conclusion that All For One and Hawks are coming to, even as she, Uraraka, and Jiro continue to run. Toga's Sad Man's Parade really should have ended this war immediately. That was an immediate win condition. Combining her powers with Twice's should have let her replicate every League of Villains member and their quirks indefinitely. All she needs to do is make one clone, transform into another League member, and clone them. If Toga could freely make Dabi clones or All For One clones, their power would be enough to turn the tide for the villains. But that isn't what happened. It's just the same Sad Man's Parade Twice used before. Self-replicating Twice clones spreading everywhere. That's bad, but it's much better than an endless stream of Dabi clones. So there's something limiting Toga's quirk here. The heroes can use that to try and push through the parade and win. All they need to do is figure it out. Froppy has a pretty good idea of what's going on. She might actually be ahead of Hawks and All For One at this point. Tsuyu's really smart. Twice's clones could use the target's powers. They showed that off multiple times. But Himiko Toga isn't really Twice, is she? Her power has an additional limit. She can only use the quirks of people she loves. It could be that copying Jin's powers doesn't erase that limit. A Toga-made copy of a target she doesn't love wouldn't get their quirk. That shouldn't be a problem. Toga joined the League in this war. She should be devoted to them. The clones can't use the original's quirks, so there has to be more to it than we thought. If Toga can copy some quirks but not others, maybe the condition takes more than just love. Rather than it just being, does she love someone or not, Toga has to deeply care about her target. She has to truly love them unreservedly. And while she has that relationship with Twice, it's not clear if she truly loves the rest of the League in that way. This could mean that if Toga can get Uraraka's blood right now, she could end up creating a clone army of her. We know she loves her enough to duplicate her quirk, or at least she did. That wouldn't be as bad as some of the other options, but would still be pretty tough for the heroes to deal with. Toga can do some real damage with that zero gravity quirk. Any duplicates would be tough to fight. But that isn't Toga's only option. Tsuyu points out the problem with this weakness. It's not stable. Toga's in a life or death struggle. Her feelings could change rapidly. If she reaches the point where she truly does love Dabi or Shigaraki and can replicate their quirks, it'll be game over for the heroes. If All For One realizes this and can manipulate her feelings, he'd trigger this instantly. He'd be able to end the fight pretty quickly, freeing himself to interrupt Deku versus Shigaraki. They have to reach Toga as soon as they can to make sure that doesn't happen. Uraraka pauses. She wonders about how Toga has to be feeling at this point. She remembers the expression Toga made during a previous fight of theirs. Meanwhile, the real Toga is buried somewhere in the middle of an endless mass of Twice clones. And as Uraraka thinks of her, we cut to Toga's perspective. She's still remembering that moment Dabi claimed they'd keep the Sandman's Parade moving. She'd done all this to try and honor Twice. But now Toga isn't doing well. She's figured out that Froppy's analysis of her quirk is right. She can't replicate some of the League's quirks. But she hasn't figured out why. As far as she's concerned, she does love Shigaraki and Dabi. Toga doesn't see the difference and can't wrap her head around not being able to copy their quirks. She knew going into this fight that it was a problem. She'd already tried to transform into Shigaraki and Dabi before the war started. She hoped that things would be different in a fight, but things didn't work out for her. Nothing's changed. But the limit in battle isn't what makes this truly devastating to Toga. It's the fact that Twice could have pulled this off. If he were here with her, they could have made this combo actually work. Even now, with everything on the line, she can't truly become Twice. His quirk is something she can't perfectly duplicate. Her love came up short. She's just a copy, hidden within the parade, while her clones keep chanting, "Every last hero's gotta die." Maybe this is the real problem. That kind of anger isn't exactly Twice-like. We can see one Twice here, but the rest are just shadows. Toga's love of Twice isn't the only emotion guiding her right now. She came here to slaughter the heroes. That was the whole point of trying to recreate the Sad Man's Parade. She told Uraraka that she wasn't being guided by love anymore. Her feelings for Twice are getting confused with her anger around his death, leaving her alone in the darkness. These Twice clones aren't him. The transformation and duplications have been twisted. Toga's love when creating them, her love of her friend, has been clouded by hate. But in an instant, that's all gone. The massive clones who had been hiding their source is moved away, leaving Toga exposed right out in the open. Somehow, Uraraka has fought her way through the whole mob, heading right for Toga's position. She's putting those gunhead martial arts moves to good use. But in the middle of all these copies, how could Uraraka tell which one was the real Toga? Well, Uraraka's a hero who wants to make people happy. So she's able to notice the copy of Twice that's crying. We cut over to the all-for-one battle where Tokoyami's still using his ultimate move, Abyssal Black Body, Light of Balder, to try and contain the master villain. It's almost impossible to make out what's going on in the middle of all that devastation. Hawks is there with his protege's physical body, cheering him on. If Tokoyami can keep the pressure up on All For One, they'll buy time for Rewind to erase him from existence. Even if the villain seems invincible, he can only last for so long now. Endeavor already defeated him once, forcing All For One to this point. They can stop him here. Jiro calls out to the Shiketsu High students, taking command of the situation. This doesn't just have to be Tokoyami's fight. His friends have a way to help here. Jiro tells the other young heroes to cover Dark Shadow. If they can help create additional darkness in the area, they'll strengthen Tokoyami's big move and tip the battle in their favor. Kami jumps in, ready to project a night sky with an aurora over the battlefield. That's the perfect move for this, helping maintain the shadow while leaving the heroes able to move and coordinate. The group still has to deal with the oncoming waves of Twice clones. If they interrupt the fight and attack Tokoyami, it'll ruin everything. But Inasa plans on keeping the ground safe from the Sad Man's Parade. He covered his allies from every direction with this wind. The heroes are being pushed, but they have a plan. By bringing their quirks together, they can win. But then, a massive earth-shattering blast breaks Kami's fake sky to shreds. We see rings of force rise above the battlefield as a blinding explosive light covers everything. The sheer sonic force of the boom kicks up a dust cloud around the battlefield. This big beam of power is too bright. A withered dark shadow is blasted away, cawing in pain. Their efforts to contain the Demon King have failed. Maybe All For One heard what Jiro said. If so, that attempt to help backfired hard. All For One starts to pick himself up, shoving hefty chunks of rubble away as he gets to his feet. He's not worried, desperate, or injured. He's just annoyed. People as powerful as Tokoyami can give even a Demon Lord trouble. But he's made it through. And now, All For One looks like a teenager. This should mostly be a good thing for the heroes. They've bought time. Rewind has clearly progressed, so it shouldn't be much longer before he's de-aged out of existence. But this is All For One at his physical prime. It'll be harder than ever to deal with him right now. Tokoyami shudders at the thought of trying to fight against his young All For One. Even with this pretty appearance, the symbol of fear is intimidating enough to scare his opponents. It's almost a mercy that All For One doesn't want to slaughter the heroes like this. He still has his eyes on the prize. Above all else, he needs to get away from them to interrupt Deku's fight with Shigaraki. He's smart enough to approach the situation tactically. Instead of striking to kill, All For One starts to fly away, blasting the assembled heroes with strokes of black lightning. He doesn't seem to be aiming at anyone specifically, but that's the point. He doesn't need to hit anyone. That'd just be a bonus. This quirk is tough enough to tear up the ground they're standing on. The barrage of lightning attacks kicks up a ton of debris, limiting visibility. Hopefully, even if the heroes can rally past the distraction, this sort of approach will buy All For One a strong head start. Fortunately, the heroes are quick to respond. Tokoyami's gotten Dark Shadow back to a usable point and is ready to pursue All For One through the air, rising above the rubble. Inasa yells out that he can carry the others with his wind. They don't need to leave anyone behind just because they're heading into the skies. And if this does turn into a mid-air fight, it'll be hard for All For One to match a guy with a quirk whirlwind. The pride of Shiketsu should be very in his element here. But before the battle progresses, we get a callback to earlier in the chapter. Once again, All For One and Hawks have a very similar realization at the exact same moment. Two of the sharpest minds, even if they're on opposing sides, are on the same page. This time, however, their emotions are very different. All For One looks excited, while Hawks is visibly tense. This isn't some subtle complication like with Toga's powers. Something has happened to help the villains. They can both make out a looming silhouette on the horizon, a vague shape somewhere on the edge of the storm. And with a perspective shift, we see a towering, gargantuan figure slowly trampling his way towards the battleground. Rubble and spikes dotting his back. All for One's most faithful servant is here. At long last, Gigantomachia has arrived. All for One doesn't waste time, giving a simple order to his pet Colossus. Finish them. End the heroes here. The giant doesn't even need to win. The big guy just trying to engage the heroes should keep them far too busy to follow All for One through the air. However, Hawks is talking into his earpiece. He's got more hope than you'd expect, given how bleak this situation looks. Apparently, Machia's appearance now means they've managed to avoid the worst case scenario, and Detective Tsukauchi is somehow the one who set that up. What if Hawks and the officer have been plotting? We get a taste of their scheme quickly. In a shocking, glorious moment, Gigantomachia tosses an entire mountain right at All for One, hurling the massive chunk of rock and dirt like it was an oversized dodgeball. All for One has no idea what's going on. He starts using that lightning quirk from before, trying to blast the mountain to bits before it hits him, while wondering what on earth could have made Gigantomachia turn against him. But then his eyes narrow. The master villain is pretty observant. Looking more closely, All for One can make out what's happened. His expression darkens as he notices the insects responsible. On top of Gigantomachia's spiky head of hair, we see two figures looking over the battlefield. Another pair of heroes have come to join the fight, and their timing couldn't be better. First up is Kirishima, and he looks like he's taken a beating getting up to the top of Gigantomachia's head. He probably had to fight Machia to set up this plan and hasn't had time to recover. There's blood and cracks all over the hard-headed hero. Red Riot's ready for a fight, and ready to stop All for One from reaching Deku and the others. They know exactly what they need to do here. Yet again, our mega theory that predicted the entire story from ages ago, linking Kirishima and Gigantomachia to the story of Hercules, has been proven accurate. Kirishima wouldn't be enough to stand up to the Demon King for long by himself, but he's backed up by the source of Machia's betrayal, Shinso, who is wearing his persona cords. With the power to replicate All for One's voice, the giant would have been an easy target for Shinso's mind control quirk. One of the most powerful villains in history has been forced onto the side of the heroes. Now this could backfire hard. Shinso's quirk is not perfect. If All for One can break the mind control on Machia, things can go very badly, very quickly. But for now, the heroes have a better position in this fight than ever before, and the villains are running out of options. As always, I'm Slice of Otaku. Thank you all so much for watching and have an awesome day. I love you.